feel like I'm a little out of place. I got an email inviting me to this Google Meet. I'm Laura Kirby. I work at Haywood Street.
I'm sorry. We're going live in like 20 seconds. So, Julie, kick off the meeting like you said, and we'll be live in like.
Well, so Ashley, hang on just a second. So I do think there are people maybe who, well, I don't know, Paul. So Ashley, it's okay if we're a few minutes late, or it's okay with me if we're.
And
so I'm wondering if people got a link to this part of the meeting that they should have gotten a link to other parts of the meeting, or did we invite all of the applicants to be in this screen? All of the applicants to be in this screen. Everybody please mute. Yeah, okay.
So Julia,
Laura Kilby, could you say which meeting? I think we may have people on here who are intended to be at a different meeting.
So, well, although like Laura is from Haywood Street Congregation, which is one of the groups that we're probably going to be giving money to today. So Paul, did those groups get the link to be a, I don't know what the word is here, but to be a panelist in Google Meet, or should they have gotten just the regular public link?
Sure. So as we are about to go live, with us doing the Cdbg reallocations, we ask that one member of each group be available in case there are any questions. How that invitation went out, I'm not exactly sure, but okay. There should be one member from each group available in case you all wanted to have that.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, so
I'm happy to log off of here if it's uncomfortable. I wasn't sure what to do.
No, Laura, I think you're fine now that I understand.
Okay. Yeah, Laura, if you'll just hide your video until we get to that part of the meeting, that will be great. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, Ashley, go do everything we're supposed to do.
All right, give me 2 seconds.
Okay, thanks.
And we're now live with audio.
Okay.
And video.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Mayfield, and I'd like to welcome you to the September Housing and Community Development Committee meeting. All council members and staff are participating virtually today, as we have for a while on all of our meetings. We appreciate your patience as we work through holding these committee meetings a little bit differently. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city's website. Excuse me. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering the code 9791. So that's 855-925-2801, and the code is 9791. And for those of you out there today watching and listening, welcome. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment, use that same phone number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9791. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, callers will hear for more options, please press star. Pressing *3 will allow callers to continue to listen live and join a speaker queue. Callers should only join the speaker queue during the time in the agenda that they wish to speak. And today's agenda, we'll have 3 opportunities for people to speak. Agenda item number 3, agenda item number 4, and then public comment at the end. So just if you want to speak on any one of those, just call in and follow those directions at the appropriate time on the agenda. So now I will go through and introduce all the committee members and staff who are participating virtually. For all of us who are on the call or on the Google Meet, please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. When you'd like to speak, unmute your microphone and then remember to remute yourself after speaking. So council and staff, as I call your names, please say a quick hello. Councilwoman Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
Councilman Keith Young.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Kathy Ball,
Good morning.
Community and Economic Development Director Sam Powers,
Good morning.
and Community Development Program Director Paul D'Angelo.
Good morning, everybody.
Okay. All right. So now diving into the meeting, the first thing we have is approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes or questions about the minutes, or is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. This is Councilman Young.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. And that was Shanika with a second. All right. We have a motion and a second. And as everybody knows, we have to do a roll call. Seems silly with 3 people, but here we go. Councilman Young.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So the minutes are approved. All right. Next, we'll jump into Community Development Department updates. As folks know, this is a written report that we get that's part of the meeting materials. Very helpful, extensive information about everything, maybe not even everything, but lots of things the department is working on. Keith and Shanika, do you have any questions for the staff about any of these things?
No questions at this time.
None whatsoever for me.
Okay. I had a couple. Surprise, surprise. Paul, on the Housing Trust Fund financial document that is included, that did not reflect either Restaurant Court or Al Clement's development that we approved recently. It makes sense to me that maybe Al's wouldn't be on there because that was just a week ago. But shouldn't Restaurant Court be reflected in that?
Yes, so this was the new kind of summary sheet we put together for you all. I think it was at August meeting. And then we are working with finance on, there was a suggestion to update it every quarter. And but we are working with that, knowing that we're moving through some additional partnerships that we will be working to have a complete update next month, and probably ask that we update this in coordination with finance once a month for the meeting. So I think that'll work out. So you'll see that next time in October, just a few weeks.
Okay. And those numbers looked really good for this year and even really good for next year. But when you add in those two, then the number starts to get really small again. The balance starts to get really small again. So,
correct.
But it's good news that we are where we are. Let's see. We also had a question that came in public comment ahead of the meeting. And I don't know, I think that was from MHO, and I don't know whether that person is also going to call in, but the question was, is there bond money for, I guess, pipeline rental developments? And I think the bigger question is, maybe we can have a little bit of a conversation about the bond money that's left. And I think try to remind everybody where we are. So we set aside $15 million for the strategic sites. Is that right? And
yes.
We're in the process of using that money. I don't know do you know how much of that money we've used, Paul?
So we've used approximately, I think $7.4 million of that 15 million. With the work around 319 Biltmore, depending on how that moves forward with the finalist and whether additional money needs to be set aside, we should know soon. But right now, I would say there's a balance of about 7.5 left in that pot.
Okay, and we used that pot to purchase 319 Biltmore and
correct.
all the other work that has happened on that. And,
correct.
And presumably, we'll use that pot to the degree that we need to subsidize the construction to get the units that we want at the income level we want. We will also use that money for that.
If the developer so needs it, yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So that's 15 million for the strategic sites. And there, just to remind folks, there are 2 other sites that we have been working on. One is in the River Arts District. The other is on Charlotte Street. And it doesn't seem like things are moving very much on the River Arts District property. Is there just a lot going on that hasn't come to us yet, or is work on that slowed a little bit?
So I think right now, with everything that's happened with COVID and all the work around 319 Biltmore, the other two are still obviously, part of strategic sites, but haven't quite moved up in priority where we're moving forward with 319 Biltmore. But the discussions around both of those sites you mentioned are still occurring. And I think once we, move a little bit further with 319, we'll be able to address those other sites.
Okay, great. So that's 15 million there. 5 million we put in the Housing Trust Fund, and the finance statement is there. That bond money is included as a line item, so people can see how we're spending that. There was 1 million for down payment assistance that's being used. There's 1 million for the Community Land Trust that we've now made available to them, and then 3 million for acquisition of new land for affordable housing. And your report indicates we've spent about 1.5 million of that for the land over by D Review. Is that right?
Yes, it hasn't been spent yet. We haven't actually purchased that site. We're finalizing due diligence. But if that goes forward, we would have about 1.5 million left in those land banking dollars. Yes.
Okay. All right. So there's about 1.5 million that we could use for purchase of additional property. And then there's about 7-something million left in the strategic sites. So I think we're not in a position yet to be sort of moving any money around to different things yet, right? If we get closer to the 2023 deadline, we might do that if there's clear need in some places and we're not spending it in other places, but I think we're not there yet. So, okay, great. And then let's see. My only other thing is we have a new staff person in your office. If you'd like to introduce that person.
Sure. So Mary Brooke Cox, who has a little bit of vacation that was already planned into her world. So as you can see, she's got a great background there. But Mary Brooke Cox comes to us through ways of San Diego and a few other municipalities. And we were really excited to add her to the team. She brings great community development experience to our team. We've already had several meetings as we've tried to move her into a lane on exactly what our department needs, as well as to play to Mary Brooke's strengths. So we're really excited. She fits in great. So we're super excited to have her. And Mary Brooke, if you wanted to say hi really quick and tell us where you are, please, that would be great.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be joining you. I apologize for the little bit of background noise. I am at Trap Pond State Park in Laurel, Delaware. Just got here yesterday, so I'm having a hard time keeping my state straight. But really excited to be joining this team and getting to know everyone. And it's such important work that y'all do as committee members. So happy to support you in any way that I can.
Great. Well, welcome, Mary Brooke. We're very happy to have you. And I'm very jealous that you seem to be camping outside. That sounds like a lot of fun. And Paul, you might have said this, so either Paul or Mary Brooke, just remind us sort of what your particular area is going to be on staff.
So one of the great things about when we bring somebody new in is our whole team gets together to figure out exactly where the need is for our team. Right now, there's going to be a big need for a main contact for down payment assistance. And also with some of our partners. I think Mary Brooke will end up being our main partner for Habitat for Humanity, which I think will be great, as well as some financial documents and closing documents that I think that our team could do better about. Like as an example, when loans are paid off, filing that deed of satisfaction and working with legal. So we're wrapping her into a lot of down payment assistance, some of that real estate financial transactions, as well as leading a couple projects, particularly being a main contact with Habitat, one of our great partners.
Great. Super. Well, welcome again. And we'll look forward to meeting you in person whenever we're allowed to do that. All right. Okay, Paul, anything else that you would like to share from your staff updates? Anything new or different?
Yeah, if I could really quick, and I'll try to keep it brief. I just wanted to thank you all as always for allowing us to have this longer community development update. It's been a great tool for us. As soon as the HCD meetings are over, it goes on our website. It gets sent out to our CD listserv. And Ashley and the great people at CAPE, we usually focus on one item and do some type of a promotional blast out so that people know exactly what we're working on. And I also, if there were any questions about the CDBG funding, CV funding, we may get into that at the next agenda item. But I did want to point out on the updates that we, in air quotes, updated our CDBG policy. So there's no changes. This is community development block grant. We receive about $1 million each year, but what our team has really been focused on is taking our policies and making them much more user-friendly, more welcoming. Megan Gaskell, who could not be here this morning, but on our CD team, really took this policy and we reworked it so that it's just much more of a user-friendly document for our partners to read. And it's I think it ends up being about 40 to 50 pages, which is much better than what it was. And one of the main reasons we wanted to do that was for outreach meetings that we've been talking about doing. So we have a lot of regular partners that come every year for CDBG funding, great partners who are doing great things in the community. But there's always been an ask, especially from this committee, about how are we outreaching to get new people interested in new partners. The start was the policy. I think it reads great, and a huge kudos to the team, and particularly Megan. And we have now set up those outreach meetings, and I just wanted to make sure to announce those today that they will be required for all of our 2021 CDBG partners to attend, to walk through the policy as well as the contracting and draw requests, but it's also open to the public. And that will be, we're doing 2 meetings. One morning meeting on Wednesday, October 21st from 9 to 10:30, and another meeting that you can attend on Thursday, October 22nd in the afternoon from 1 to 2:30. They will be virtual and welcome to the general public. Hopefully we can reach out to find all sorts of new partners with an interest and work to do that there. So I wanted to make sure to point that out. And then again, to show everybody we're working, the draw requests, or about 169 draw requests for $4.3+ million back out into community during COVID. So really the team's working away, and kudos to all the folks on our team trying to do our best while we're working remotely. And Julie, you're muted.
Thank you. Hate that. Yeah, just want to make sure everybody is aware of those dates. And Paul, I'm sure you'll get those out in all of the ways that you normally do, since those are being required for groups that are coming in for CDBG funding next year. And just remind us, generally applications for that are due usually in January, early in the year sometime. Is that right?
Usually the first week in February is when they're due. And then normally we have our funding meetings in March. This year, of course, was very unique. So we're still working through, but we're almost there.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is the CDBG contingency funding. And just to remind people, we did make our CDBG awards earlier this year, but we did have about $154,000 left over. And staff recommended and council agreed to make that funding available to groups that come in the public service category. Not usually the amount that we can make available to those groups is capped, but COVID has given us the ability to lift that cap. So Paul, why don't you tell us where we are on all of that?
Sure. So that's a great introduction. Thanks, Julie. So yes, we did have a contingency of the $154,711, and we had asked, let's see where we can go with the COVID dollars that might be coming our way, public service agencies, et cetera. And then with the additional funding that we just got notice that we will be receiving at Community Development, City of Asheville, in CV funding of $889,486, we felt like, okay, with that additional funding coming our way, we feel it makes sense for the contingency funding of $154,000 plus to be distributed amongst our public service agencies who, as you know, are capped, as you said, and we never quite get a chance to fully fund them. So in the staff report, which I'm happy to share if you'd like me to show the second part of that, Julie, we were able to reach out to our funded agencies and ones that were not recommended for funding to see if they had a reason that perhaps with the COVID situation that they have a reason for they could use the additional dollars for their original request, that then they just need to show the connection with additional work that they're doing around COVID to prepare for and respond to COVID. And we heard back from everybody except for one person, and then we were able to divvy up the fundings. And again, happy to share how we were able to do that. And this is all, Julie, hopefully making some sense, but a lot of things going on with waivers. This year with COVID, Cdbg HUD said we could do a waiver and go above the 15% cap on public services. We think it's great to take advantage of that with all the work they're doing. The agencies agreed. We did invite them here today if there were any questions for them, and I'm happy to go over the numbers.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and just put those numbers up so people can see the groups that we are able to fund. And again, folks who are listening will know how incredibly frustrating it is every year to not be able to fund these groups to the full amount because of the cap that is normally in place here. So Paul, let me ask you this. I did not go back and look at the original applications, but were we essentially able to fund everybody up to the full amount that they requested, or did they come in with a new request?
So I'll go back to this here. So we were able to fund everybody except for one agency up to their full request that came back to say, yes, we have been affected by COVID. Yes, we could use the additional funding up to our original request to be able to utilize those fundings due to COVID in the community, and we would like to be considered. And I believe in the staff report, we were able to attach those emails. So if you all can see this screen from regarding Helpmate, Homeward Bound, On Track, YWCA for both empowerment, childcare, mother love, Fiscal Legal, Elida Homes, and the Haywood Street Congregation. Here were their original funding recommendations that were here, as well as the additional, how we were able to fund them with this contingency up to their original request for all of those agencies I just mentioned, as well as the Spark Foundation here at the bottom of that up to $74,542, and able to redistribute that full contingency equally among all those agencies. Caring for Children did not get back to us, and we reached out for due dates and extended the due date. But what we did, because we hadn't heard from them until a little bit later, is we still had $6,332 to distribute. So as a courtesy and one of our good partners, we added that that additional funding to their original funding award to give them $16,332, and we heard back from them and they were happy with that. So this is the final figures that we came up with for the contingency.
Okay, that's great. All right, do committee members have any questions for Paul about this?
I don't have any questions for Paul. That was thoroughly laid out.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we do need to get public comment on this. So Ashley, do we have anybody on the line? Committee members, I should also tell you that we have representatives from a number of these groups on the phone with us if you have questions for them, for the groups themselves. So
Julie, one caller.
Okay, great.
Caller ending 5825, your line is now open.
Anybody there?
They seem to have disconnected.
Okay. Okay. Well, Ashley, if they call in, maybe we can reconnect them. But in the meantime, we do need to. I guess we need to move that this recommendation go to council for approval. So, do we have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, and we'll do the roll call vote. Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
And Councilman Young.
Aye.
And I am also an aye, so that passes, and we'll go on to City Council for approval. And Paul, just want to say thanks to you and the staff for both, I think, the foresight and kind of holding this money in reserve for whatever we might need it for, and then for using it to help these groups get to the full funding requests. We don't ever get to do that, and so it's very exciting. And I feel like Santa Claus. I'm happy that we get to do this.
Thanks, Julie. And we got the notice about the $889,000 just about a week and a half ago. We will be, as that still obviously takes a while before it drops. We're already having the discussions on how best to react to COVID. We will, of course, be getting back to you with more information at next HCD meeting.
Okay, great. That's great. Ashley, the caller has reconnected. You want to put them through?
Caller, I've unmuted your line. You won't get the automated message.
Is anyone there?
Okay. Caller, I'm going to mute you. If you can hang up and call back in and do the process again, and we'll try to get you back on the line. Thank you.
And in the meantime, I guess what I would say to the folks who are on the screen with us on this call, since we didn't have questions for you, you're welcome to drop off at this point if you want to. You don't have to, but you are welcome to. But good luck, and thank you for all the great work that you're doing in our community. And I think we're all very happy that we can give you some more resources to make your jobs easier. And we'll just wait for a minute for this person to reconnect.
It doesn't look like they're reconnecting.
Okay. This we know that this happens sometimes. I feel like we should have a backup way for them to somehow get in. But anyway. All right. So we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the Luigi policy. And Paul, do you want to lead us in on this one?
Sure. Thanks, Julie. And I will briefly go through the staff report. And then if you'd like, I'm happy to bring up the policy with the recommended word changing just for an update here. And this has been out there for a bit, but with COVID, getting this back to everybody's radar here. But basically, taking a look at this land use incentive grant that was updated, or policy that was updated last fall, there were a couple changes that we wanted to add based on conversations with recent applicants and partners that have come forward. So some changes of note, as guided by discussion with City Council and legal, is $80,000 per unit cap on subsidy over the affordability period. At least 20% of the units versus 10% of the units meeting the affordability standards set by the City of Asheville, earning 80% or less of area median income to just qualify for the Luigi. We put some clarity on the rental assistance scoring, procedure for assessing tax value and annual rent increases, and then a couple areas for discussion regarding, if there's any discussion around the 80,000 cap or the end of the affordability period. And Julie, if you'd like, I'm happy to share the policy and walk through the highlighted areas. And just give me a moment. And if everyone wanted to mute their microphones, that would be great. If I'm allowed to say that, Julie. And I'm bringing up the policy. So if everyone can see this, this is the draft land use incentive. And I will do my best to go through this quickly, but I want to make sure the clarity is here. So one of the first highlights has to do with the property taxes. As you all may know, sometimes Buncombe County will assess a property halfway through a build. So it doesn't kind of equal that full, like with improvements, full tax value. So we've clarified that the land use incentive grant and that rebate on city property taxes won't happen until after that full value is assessed by Buncombe County. We've had people ask about that clarity. At least 20% of the units being affordable. In general, while affordability is never easy, developers, we feel, can work with making 10% of the units affordable on their own to individuals and families making 80% or less of area median income. But when you get up to 20%, there needs to be some type of subsidy or incentive. And that's why we're asking to change this from 10% to enter into this policy and up to 20% of the units so that we're getting that many affordable units. And we think that makes sense for what's needed for subsidy. And as always, here with this clarifying language, the city staff tries to look at the financials of a development to make sure that the subsidy is needed to make the numbers work.
Paul, can you make your screen just a little bit bigger? Those of us who have terrible vision need and old eyes need it to be bigger.
A little better? That work? Great. And let me go back to that. So we updated the scoring just to kind of match better with 20% affordable, 20 points, 30% affordable. And this page 2 of the land use incentive grant is really what developers like because it really helps them with the scoring. And then here a note, regardless of a project's total score under the above matrix, the language about capping at $80,000 per unit per unit over the affordability period. And then the third.
And maybe, Paul, maybe we could just stop for 1 second and just remind people the reason we put that cap in place was, I think it was the tribute project that came through, right? That it's such a good project from this standpoint that the subsidy would have been, gosh, what, it was like $120,000 a unit or something like that.
It was. Good memory, Julie. And I think what happens is, and hopefully, it shows here with these policies that we try to adapt and grow and listen, because a parking deck, which is a part of that build, we never considered that when we developed the policy, and then the parking deck can then get valued into the overall bill, but it really doesn't have to do with the affordable units. And so I've clarified that language as well, that we won't be including a parking deck, which I think will help with that $80,000 cap. And again, the clarity language is, but yeah, when you look at a parking deck and a bill that gives you everything close to downtown, we had $120,000. There was a lot of discussion around that, as you remember. And mathematically, we know it takes about $80,000, give or take, to make these numbers work for affordable for 20 years. So we kind of settled on that cap for now. But we do have language that people can also bring forward why they might need more. And I'll show you that in just a moment.
Okay, great. Keep going.
So page 3 of this policy is really the notes on the matrix for the clarity of what exactly we're asking for. That rental assistance, we just clarified that for points under rental assistance of taking a housing choice voucher, at least 5% of the total number of units need to accept rental assistance. So we clarified what that was going to mean regarding taking a voucher, which has been a big push from the city of Asheville and community development. Regarding application procedures and notes, there's the note about the demonstrated need here. We are recommending a $300 non-refundable application fee. I don't think it made it into this year's fees. I have to double check that, but hopefully we can add that for next year's, that there's an application fee. And then here is the clarity on how a developer would get a proper tax assessment from the Buncombe County Tax Office. And we have, I don't want to say put the burden on the developer to do that, but we've asked the developer to reach out to Buncombe County and work through these. This is what the Buncombe County folks need to do a proper tax assessment. In the past, it's been like, is the developers making a recommendation of what they think it will be? This kind of clarifies that we would like to see what Buncombe County says this project based on these factors will be. And I think that's very important that that's a part of the process so that we have actual clarity and not just a developer number that might be put out there. And that can take up to 30 days. So we put a note in here that, you definitely need to reach out to get that assessment because it can take them a bit to be able to do that. This language here, unless granted an exception here, no new updated Luigi applications can kind of come in after the fact. So once it's, all the entitlements are done, we're saying that you can't come back later to say now you need a Luigi land use incentive grant. So we clarified that language with legal. And I'm about halfway through, so I appreciate your patience here. I do think this is important. And then here is the note about, please note that the city will only support a Luigi up to $80,000 per unit of subsidy during the term of the grant, although this figure may, bolded, be adjusted upwards by council if requested by the developer based on the type of build, the level of affordability targeted, the length of affordability, shared parking agreement, etc., as well as city property tax increases or revaluations. So we did want to leave, as one of the public comments mentioned, some flexibility there to go above that $80,000 per unit for a variety of reasons that they could bring forward, which I always think is important for flexibility. And then after the application process, we're trying to add some clarifying language that, when a land use incentive grant comes before us, a lot of folks developers are looking at sometimes like a year in advance, wanting to put through their Luigi application. And we're just trying to make people know, we're really looking for projects that are shovel ready to move forward so that we don't kind of have an agreement sitting out there. And we just wanted to have that clarity based on capacity, et cetera, which we thought was important. Almost there, guys. And then real quick here, some legal language notwithstanding and foregoing. The land use incentive grant is not an entitlement or under obligations to award such grants, and the city reserves the right to deny the application at the city's discretion. Post-award, there's been a lot of questions from our partners about exactly how all the post-award works. So we have put a lot of bullet points, which I'll show in just a second on the Appendix 1 that we work with. But a lot of question about verification of income and when exactly all this happens. So what we're suggesting here is that verification of income at initial lease up is required, obviously, to make sure we're getting income qualified folks in and really helping our individuals and families who need affordable units. So we're asking that is done at initial lease up and at the yearly lease renewal to ensure that the individual family remains income qualified based on the latest year's area median income limits just published by HUD and accepted by the city of Asheville. If the tenant is allowed to go month to month on their lease, no income verification is required. If at renewal the tenant is over the area median income by no more than 10%, the city requires that you keep the tenant at the affordable rent. If the tenant is over income by more than 10% of those figures, the tenant can either move to market rate rent or not renew the lease. As a courtesy, the city of Asheville requests that income verification on affordable units for renewal occur 120 days before lease end to allow the tenant additional time should they be over income. And this has come up recently with affordable folks reaching out to us because it is not easy to find affordable units in Asheville, and it could take more time. And that's why we're asking as a courtesy that a lot of lease renewals happen at 60 or 90 days. We're asking, could you give us 120 days? Please. And we have it in as a courtesy. If y'all wanted to make that required, we're happy to do that. A reminder that annual rent increases for an affordable unit should not exceed 2.5%, and the rent can never be more than the current year's allowable rent as published by Appendix 1. And I think this is basically the last note here. a lot of things have come up about the end of the affordability period. Like if the land use incentive grant ends, say September of 2020 right now, like what does that look like? Does everybody immediately go to market rent? People have said, can my lease be terminated? Things like this. So what we've clarified is at the end of the affordability period, units that are occupied by income qualified tenants must be able to remain in tenancy, at the affordable rent until the lease is renewed, until lease renewal. At renewal, the property can voluntarily keep the tenant at an affordable rent, which would be great if they are income qualified, or raise the rent to market rate rent. If the tenant terminates the lease, the unit no longer has to remain at the affordable rent and can be moved to market rate. And of course, that's the end of the Luigi agreement. Please note that affordability changes cannot be made until after the end of the Luigi agreement. As an example, if the Luigi agreement ends in May and a tenant's lease ends the January before, their affordable lease will be renewed for 1 full year or month to month if the tenant agrees, as long as all the criteria are met. So we're just trying to clarify what the end of a Luigi agreement looks like. And a little clarifying language there about improvements, exactly what the taxes look like. And on enforceability, I think there's just some legal language here. So I will stop sharing to take questions, but I can come back to this. There's a lot there, and I apologize for that, but it's an important policy. The clarification matters. Developers and tenants have asked for it, and I think that clarity is super important.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It actually, why don't you go back to sharing it? Because if we've got questions, it'll be helpful to look at the language. I've got a couple of questions. Number one, I just want to clarify on the rental assistance piece, the 5%. If they choose rental assistance as one of the ways that they get points, it has to be 5% of the total number of units, not just the affordable units. But to be clear, we're not requiring them to accept vouchers and other forms of rental assistance to get the Luigi. They can select that to get more points, but they don't have to select that. Is that correct?
That is correct. At this time, it's just you can get points for accepting rental assistance vouchers, but it is not required at this point. And we continually try to remind folks about always considering that option.
So, have we considered making that a condition of the Luigi as opposed to an incentive?
I believe it's been talked about, but I don't think it's ever become a requirement. And I'm not sure. I know Janice is on the call if there's anything legal around that, as well as requiring vouchers.
Janice, do you want to weigh in on that?
I think you could require it. Remember, this is a program, they're getting the incentive, so it's sort of a bargain of the deal. And so I think you could require it. And I forget, Paul, if it was ever considered to make it a threshold. I don't know if you want to go back to what the thresholds are, but I think you could certainly consider that as a requirement or as a threshold, or just like the 10%, right? No, you're doing 20% at 80% now.
Right.
Change.
Right.
In general, for our policies, our threshold, and as we always say, like to be able to walk in the door to start a conversation, you have to at least have 20-80-20. And now we've got, if this passes, we'll have consistency for the most part. 20% of the units affordable to 80% or below of area median income for individuals and families for affordability period of 20 years. That's 20-80-20. We could add, and the acceptance of housing choice vouchers or rental assistance.
Right, of some sort.
And I just had one more thought, because if you're doing the 20% at 80%, and if those units with the housing vouchers, they're not on top of that. So some of those units, that's a really easy commitment to say, well, those units are going to be at 80%, those are going to go to the vouchers. So that's always been a thought I've had. Are you almost not double dipping, but do you want even more on top of that? Do you want some 20% at 80%? And do you want those to be also used by the rental vouchers? Or do you want the rental vouchers on top? Or maybe get points to do it, additional rental vouchers.
Right. So maybe the standard is you have to do 5%, but if you want to do 10%, then you can get points for that. Something like that. Keith, you want to weigh in on this?
No, just to say, I think everybody knows vouchers, and I would concur with everything that you said, Julie, as far as making it a requirement at some level. So I just wanted to give a nod to that, and you have my full support.
Shanika, do you have a thought on that as well?
That's just fine.
Okay.
So what I could do, Julie, if you'd like, is based on a percentage amount, I can reword this and reword not only where you get points here, but also kind of the thresholds to qualify, as Janice had mentioned right here. Here's kind of where we talk about the 20-80-20. We can add in something about the vouchers.
Yeah, let's add to this list that at least 5% have to accept rental assistance of some sort. And then in the matrix, let's change that percentage to 10%. So if they want to do 10%, which would be up to half of the potentially affordable units that they can do more affordable units, but it would be half of those would be 10%. They would get points for that.
So I could change.
I would agree with all of that, Julie.
Okay, great.
And right here, Julie and Keith and Shanika, I could change this to 10% and keep the points at 10 points.
Sure.
Which equals 2 years of property tax abatement.
That's great.
Okay,
good. So then my next set of questions is, and Keith and Shanika, then I'll jump to you, but scroll down to sort of the end of term stuff.
Is it here? Post award?
Yes, go down a little bit more.
Okay.
If the tenant. So in that top bullet there, the last sentence is, if the tenant is allowed to go month to month on their lease, no income verification is required. So tell me about that. What's the thinking behind that?
So there are a lot of folks in apartment complexes allow folks to go month to month after 1 year or 2 years on the lease. And they could just go month to month from there. That would be saying if the tenant is allowed to go month to month, they don't need to income verify every month for something like that. And then the tenant could stay month to month at that affordable rent as long as they're month to month with that flexibility. We could add in that they still need to income verify once a year so that we're making sure that units are saved for the individuals and families, who need it the most if someone does, their income does rise. So we can still add in protection there for the unit itself to make sure it's going to an affordable individual or family. But with them going month to month and they stay at the affordable rent, we didn't see a need for continued income verification.
So what do other committee members think about this? I mean, I think, balancing here someone who's kind of working their way up the AMI ladder and, might be making more than 80% AMI, but not yet really enough to afford a market rate place on the one hand, but then on the other hand, if someone gets a different job and suddenly is making 120% of AMI, then they're in a unit that is really intended for somebody who's making a lot less. So I'm trying to balance those two things. And, we want these units to be available to people who are making less money. So I guess I wonder if, I don't know how to do this.
So I could add, Julie, if you wanted to here, if the tenant is allowed to go month to month on their lease, income verification should still occur yearly to make sure the individual or family is income qualified.
I think yearly would work. Where are you wanting to go with this, Julie?
Say that again, Keith.
I said, I think a yearly income verification could work. I mean, considering that, you know, some of these things happen even in public housing. I mean, it's one of those when people make more money, they're in public housing, their rent goes up. So they get a choice to, you know, they got to figure out, am I going to stay? Am I going to go? What, you know, if I'm going to pay a certain amount, right. That's not apples to apples to what you're talking about, but
we don't want to incentivize people not to make money.
No, of course not. Of course,
we don't want to penalize people for making more money.
No, so, I agree. I do think, you know, there probably should be a little bit of leeway as to like when someone starts making a little bit more money, when they got to get out of this place or whatever. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah. I mean, maybe we say something like, you know, if income verification reaches, I don't know, 120% of AMI, 110% of AMI, then they need to move. Again, I don't know.
I get where you're trying to go with this. I don't have a hard opinion on it. I think a year is fine, but if you have other thoughts, then I'm willing to listen to those and move forward. I mean, you brought up a good point though.
And Julie and Keith, if I can add, you know, that we can change this again, as I think you're saying, to still require income verification, even if they're month to month on a yearly basis. And then here, if you can still see my screen, you know, we went with 10%. If you wanted to change that to 20%, because it is a fine line. Julie, the word balance fits into a lot of our work of trying to balance these needs here. But we could change that to 20%. So in other words, I think if the threshold was $30,000 and, you know, their income went up a certain, not more than 20% of that they could remain versus whatever the new figure that comes out, so that people aren't suddenly, you know, wow, I make $30,001. I've got to move out now. So we tried to find a percentage. We went for 10%. If you think 20% makes sense, I think that we would be fine with that as a staff.
20%. That sounds good, Paul.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think 20% gives, again, it still, I don't think that creates a disincentive for people to earn more money. And then when they are earning more money, then they have more choices in the marketplace.
Looks like you got 3 nods on that one.
And then there was something else in this paragraph. Okay. If the tenant is over income by more than 20%, the tenant can either move to market rate or not renew the lease. So here, basically we are saying once you get to 20%, you either renew at market rate or you're out. So,
and what we're asking as if, say, somebody's lease is up September 1st, we're asking that on May 1st, before that lease end date, their income qualifying them. And if they are found to have, their income has gone, 20% above what that current AMI is, then that gives that person 120 days to either start adjusting their budget, staying where they're at and adjusting their budget because they'll move to market rate, or it gives them 4 months to be able to find another potentially affordable unit or maybe a less expensive apartment in the market.
Right. So maybe, hopefully, some of our partner organizations that are listening to this conversation on the call, maybe you can offer your thoughts on that, whether 20% is the right amount. Okay, and then scroll down a little bit more.
I'm updating live, Julie.
Julie, can I just comment on this section before you move on?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that I hadn't focused on this before, but I would advise that you make the income verification as you're doing for month-to-month rentals as well, because I just don't think it would be fair to do for one and the other. And
Right.
Paul, I think it's nice that you say as a courtesy, give them 120 days. But again, this is your program. And this is a big deal if somebody has to move to a market rate unit. So I think that could be a requirement if that's what you all think.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. That was one of the other things I was going to say is we do need to, let's make that a requirement, that notice a requirement.
And just so you all know, these are actually, a lot of this is based on real world examples of people who received like a 60-day notice and they're struggling to find another affordable or less expensive unit.
Right.
And Paul, I would put in writing, we'll work on it, but that they have to get that kind of notice in writing, because you've had an example where a tenant called and said, I just got over the phone. Somebody called and said, I have to move. So that's
Correct.
not acceptable. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And so then scroll down to the next, at the end of the affordability period.
And this is also a real world example, Julie and Keith and Shanika.
If the tenant terminates the lease, the unit no longer has to remain at the affordable rent and can be moved to market rate. There was something in here.
So, as an example down there, Julie, if somebody entered into a Luigi agreement for 10 years and it was in May of 2010, and that Luigi agreement with the city ends in May of 2020, obviously 10 years later, it can't be just like a swooping change, like everybody moves to market rate, or their leases aren't renewed. We're trying to make sure that the tenants are taken care of here based on the agreement. And so, if somebody is renewing their lease in January for a year, then they should be allowed, and this is staff's recommendation, the January before that May, like yearly lease renewal, they will be an affordable unit until that December, which technically is past the affordability period. So it's a little bit more than 10 years, but we also think that protects the tenant and is not too much of a requirement for the developer or property manager.
Yeah, I think that's right. I suppose you have in parentheses here that if the tenant wants to go to month, obviously there would be an incentive for the property manager to try to get them to go to month. Why would the tenant want to go to month in that situation?
It's just allowing that flexibility. Some tenants like to be on a month to give them flexibility if they're considering moving to a different area. It just buys them, that flexibility that they don't have to cancel a lease halfway into it and then pay those penalties.
Okay.
Just a question just off the top of my head. Is there a possibility, or has there been any thought of, once the affordability period has ended, instead of doing what's suggested, maybe having some sort of, instead of going straight to market rate, there's a gradual increase over an extended period of time to get back to market rate?
We tried to write in that 120 days, Keith, for that flexibility. If somebody can start budgeting, so that if they really like their apartment going up to market rate, and to budget for 120 days, or the opportunity to find a different or another affordable unit out there or less expensive unit. The one thing we've heard from the partners on this, that whether it's through conditional zoning or Luigi, is, the less complicated and more clarity, the better. I don't know. We haven't considered that as a gradual rent increase, and I don't know what our partners would think of that, but we can start talking with them about that as we have our yearly meetings with them and check in on how the program's working.
When you say less complicated, are we talking about less complicated for the renter or less complicated for the individual, for the entity that's renting the affordable unit?
It's less complicated for the property management company who, they can work with this program and they like the clarity. I don't know how they would feel about if somebody's rent's affordable at $700, but the market's, $1,000. Like, hey, we need you to increase their rent $50 a month for 6 months or whatever, 8 months, to get them to market rate. I just don't know, if they would think that that's complicated if they have 200 units, different rent levels, certain affordable. So we could certainly speak to them to see what they thought of something like that. I've reached out about the 120 days and they all thought they could work with that. It's different than what they do now, but as a courtesy, they thought it made sense because it's hard to find affordable units.
I also think, Keith, if we were going to do that, we might need to, and maybe this is what you're saying is, again, sort of create an incentive for them to keep the units at least somewhat affordable by giving them the opportunity to come back in and apply for, maybe it's not the full Luigi, although maybe it is. Maybe it's, if they want to keep these units affordable, then they continue, there can continue to be some benefit from that. And Paul, maybe the thing to do is to put in here the concept of, if at the end of the affordability period, if the property manager, the property owner wants to continue to make these units available, the affordable units available, that they are encouraged to come in and talk to community development staff about options for doing that. And it seems like we could extend the Luigi for some period of time. We could, they could just sort of go through the matrix again. If they wanted to have fewer units available for a shorter period of time, that would just change the calculation. But, honestly, what we're talking about here is, I don't know when, have we had any Luigi projects that have reached the end of their period of affordability?
There's one that I know of right now, and we're trying to follow through on that clarity there because I think that's where there's been an issue of our Luigi agreement's ending in May, and then this September, they're not wanting to renew a lease, at the affordable rent, because if they did another year lease, it's past that affordability period. And there wasn't clarity on this before. We're trying to have the clarity now, and a lot of things come up on that clarity. But we're trying to avoid situations like that to where, well, wait a second, if the Luigi agreement's not done yet, and wow, you're only giving the person 60 days. So we're trying to address these things with this policy, if all that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think, again, we want to try to keep units as affordable over a longer period of time. So encouraging owners or property managers to come back in and have a conversation with us about what tools are available now that maybe weren't available when they built it, or maybe as a result of those conversations, we create some new tools. That's kind of the history of this program, is that we continue to adapt the tools to the situations that are in front of us, which I think is a good thing.
I can make this language a little bit better here, but
yeah.
I apologize. It feels strange to update live. It feels weird.
That's all right. I think I would say maybe not just extending the Luigi, but again, if there are any other, maybe at some point we would have, or maybe they could even get, I don't know, do we make housing? I can't remember. We've changed these policies so much. Like maybe at that point there would be housing trust fund funds available to, if the property is at a place where they need to renovate the property, maybe that would be, funding that could be available to help renovate those units, but keep them affordable. So I just want to, don't limit it to just Luigi, but sort of, contemplate that there could be other tools available.
like a second phase of a Luigi or something like that. So I can try to write in that language similar to the $80,000 cap. We come in, let's have, if you feel you need more for X, Y, Z reasons, come in for a conversation. The same thing around this, that if the program's working well and they're enjoying being a part of the solution, but their Luigi period's ending, come on in and let's discuss how to extend it and keep units affordable. So I can try to write something.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. I think those were all my questions. Hang on just a second. Okay. So Keith and Shanika, any other questions, that you have for Paul about this, and then we'll open it up for public comment.
No, not at this time. Anything that I was going to say has already been covered. So good to go on my end.
I'm good.
Okay.
And
all right.
Julie, if I may quickly, and I promise quickly, on the Appendix 1, which is here, this is where we try to really have that clarity because this is a document online. We haven't officially accepted the 2021 affordable rents because of the large increase in COVID, but this is where a lot of this clarity gets published so that people can read here. So I'll continue to make sure that any changes happen, and then the notes and then links to other policies here, which I think, again, the reason for a lot of this is the developer partners, and I'll stop sharing, asking for clarity. And I think that clarity of understanding exactly how the program works welcomes more people to be like, oh, this is doable. Mm-hmm. Like, this is all spelled out for me. Great. Mm-hmm. I know how it works. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've noticed over the last year. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, well, and really appreciate y'all making yourself so available to private developers who are new to this world but wanting to participate. People like Al Clement, you've been talking with him for 14 months, and it's not like people just don't walk in overnight and suddenly build affordable housing. That's not the way it works. So, all right, Ashley, let's go to public comment.
We have 2 callers. Stand by.
Thank you.
Hello, HCD. This is Margie Bukowski with Weaver Cook Construction. And I am, thank you for letting me have a few minutes to speak. I did try to contact some of you earlier today. I'm glad to hear that there is some flexibility in the $80,000 per unit. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the cost of lumber. Weaver Cook builds affordable apartments all over the state of North Carolina and South Carolina. And so we are constantly aware of the price of materials. Lumber has gone up almost 150% since the late spring. Part of that is due to COVID. Part of that is due to the forest fires out west. When people can't get lumber from their distributors out west, they come to the southeast. Hence, there are shortages. Right now, lumber is about $607 per 1,000 board feet. Prices like that haven't been seen in many years. Now, we think that it's a spike because of these issues. We are in unprecedented times, and we think it will go down, we're hoping, late spring. But it's a gamble because we don't know what's going to happen with COVID or with the forest fires, the effect that they will have. So I want you to just be aware that there does need to be flexibility for situations like this. 80,000 really isn't going to get it per unit at this time, and maybe even into some of 6 months of next year. So I'm just asking for, if somebody came up to you and said 90,000 a unit, which is certainly more reasonable at this point in time, then you would be willing to take a look at that. I mean, we have lots of indexes that we can show you as to what the prices of lumber have done. So I don't know how aware all of you are of those types of things. Any comment?
Julie, you're mute.
I got it. Thank you. I do. Thanks, Margie. That's helpful. I think like all of our policies, they're starting places. When I got on council, our policy was no more than $20,000 subsidy per unit, and we've blown through that pretty quickly. So I think the flexibility is there, and as you said, hopefully this is just a spike that will go down again. But thank you for making us aware about that. All right, Ashley, do we have somebody else?
One more caller.
Hello, this is Greg Borum with Children First Communities in Schools. Thanks for letting me speak, and I'm assuming y'all can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I really appreciate, again, the iterative process over Luigi and Julie, and just talking about like how things have changed over time with this policy. I'm really glad that it's being reviewed annually because it's such an important tool. I did want to weigh in on the conversation, though, around the rental, the income verification part, because I think that place, in my opinion, deserves a little like that's a real philosophical kind of fork in the road for this policy as I see it, with the opportunity, with kind of limited opportunities in Asheville right now for kind of getting a lot of people into home ownership as a way to build wealth and address issues around wealth disparities. The question I think for the city is, can you leverage some other policies, because we know that where Asheville's got a large rental population. That's the trend nationally, with rental versus home ownership. And so, is there a way to work with this policy to help be potentially a wealth creation tool and a stabilizing force for both, the community, the neighborhood of a rental unit versus a place that kind of churns through the affordable units. And so, especially when you're looking at families too, like if you could have the stability of getting into a unit and income qualifying into it once, raising children, saving for college or other things, because what we know is that our housing prices, both in rents and in for sale units, are really outpacing our local wage growth typically in Asheville, I think. And so even if you were to double, like, and go from 80% AMI to 160%, that's not really a guarantee that there's a lot of options for you, and that will probably now eat into any disposable income you may have realized. Mm-hmm. And so if we're really looking at policy that could help stabilize and promote another way for folks to, address issues around wealth, not just affordability, and try to look at the places the city can kind of build those stepping points at different ways. I think this might deserve a deeper conversation. I was wondering too if like the Office of Equity kind of has looked at that to weigh in on how that might meet some goals there. But I think in terms of kind of family stability and the opportunity to be a wealth generation versus with the public housing model of always having kind of your income your rent ratcheting up so that you can't ever kind of meet that place where there's a buffer. That's a philosophical question, I think, for the city and how y'all want to approach that. So I just want to raise that. And I think from my initial look at it, thinking of families with children, the longer we can keep them in safe, stable, affordable housing, and even build that wealth and savings for the future, that's a better outcome. It also, I think, builds stronger communities when there's less turnover. So thinking about how that might play into it. And then finally, I just wanted to kind of get clarification of that conversation we're having about taking vouchers or rental assistance. I was still a little confused if the 5% was going to be 5% outside of the 20% that are designated affordable, and kind of how you'll monitor that. But just some questions on that. But again, thank you for y'all's just constant looking at this stuff and trying to be imaginative. It's just so appreciated. So thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Greg. Just to answer
We have another caller.
Oh, no, we do. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Keep going then.
Hello, this is Drew Crawford of the DIY Tiny, and just wanted to say thank you to Paul specifically for the tremendous amount of work in taking feedback and incorporating it into the public policy. I wanted to ask that you consider expanding even further the voucher requirements, but pair that with a voucher indemnification program so that smaller landlords in particular can be better protected against what is commonly seen as a fear risk of renting to folks who are able to have vouchers. So again, take a look at the programs that are currently being run in Asheville. There's some trial programs I think are doing great work to pair greater requirements with city money, but also with greater protection for smaller landlords. And again, thank you for the tremendous work on this program. Specifically, I hope that my application can actually be viewed through these rules if they come together at the same time. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, Drew. Anybody else?
That was our last caller.
Okay. So let's go back and make sure that we are that we're all on the same page about the rental assistance. So my thought was that this is not the requirement of 5% is not over and above the 20%. It's just that we're now saying that 5% of the 20% have to accept vouchers. And then if they want more points, they can have 10% of that 20%. They could have they can have as many as they want, but they could have, half of those affordable units be accept vouchers. They could have all of them accept vouchers. I mean, and Paul, maybe we need to actually work that in as yet another layer of incentive points. If they have to do 5%, and then if they want to do 10%, 15%, or 20%, they just keep getting more points the more they want to do. Does that?
Yeah, I could do that on the appendix. On the page 2 of the Luigi policy, which is the matrix.
The matrix.
I just have to get over that I'm trying to keep the matrix on one page. And if I can get past that for simplicity, then I will be good. But I promise I'll take a thought at that. And then also, a level of affordability that makes, sense as well. So I'll take a look at that.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll try to highlight these differences at council as well.
Okay. Is that all right with Keith and Shanika? I mean, we want to incentivize people to use vouchers for as many of the affordable units as possible, or as they're willing to, and up to 100% of them, I think, right?
No, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So on the other question, as usual, Greg has put good wisdom on the table, and Paul, if you could bring that language back up about, at what point do we essentially say to someone who's in one of these units, you got to get out? And what the policy originally said was 10%. We bumped it to 20. Yeah, I mean, Greg makes a really great point that what we are trying to do here is help people accumulate capital and accumulate wealth and pay for other things, and not have to struggle with housing. That resonates a lot with me. And so maybe we don't even have anything in there. We just, once you're income, once you're in, you're in. I don't know. What do folks think about that?
Well, and if I may, from a perspective of the folks we talk to, it's similar to where, down payment assistance, originally everyone's like, we need to make this a grant program. Whoops, I can go back to this. We need to make this a grant program. And then everyone's like, well, no, we need this continuous funding for down payment assistance. And folks like MHO are like, yes, it needs to be a revolving fund so we can keep assisting folks. Very similar here, where I think originally a lot of discussion was, well, once they're in, let's keep it affordable. But then the conversation turned to, but what about all the additional folks that also need affordable? Where's their entry level to come in if the units are all like, well, they're in, they're going to remain affordable for that person. And so that's where it was the discussion of like, well, when they're over income and 20%, then they've got the 4 months to make an adjustment. Just shooting off the hip here, do we change that to, if they are over income at any level, that they have give them the lease is renewed at the current affordability rate and is reevaluated that following year. And if they are over at that point, then they've got an entire year to try to figure out an opportunity or something like that. Just trying to think out loud. I don't know. But I hear where Greg's coming from, and it's, again, that balancing act of a lot of our work.
Right. Paul, what's the longest, you may not know this off the top of your head, or you may, what is the longest Luigi that we've given? I think Tribute was like 16 years or 20 years or something.
I think Tribute came in at the longest of 20 years. And I think, it's 20 years plus one. So I think that is the longest Luigi that I could think of off the top of my head recently.
Right. So we do limit it to 20.
And the other thought, Julie, is I have a meeting with Equity on Friday. I'm happy to re-engage them regarding this conversation if you all with council would like me to do that.
Yeah, that
Sure.
might make sense. And you feel like you've gotten the input that you need from, again, some of our key partners on this, like MHO, and I mean, like, I'd be curious to know how MHO does theirs. Do they, I mean, once you're in an affordable unit at MHO, are you in, or do you have to income verify every year? And at some point you have to leave? I mean, do we know how MHO does it?
Well, they have the tax credit properties, with the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency for the most part. And that always requires a shift of brain, Julie, to their program. And I don't think with tax credit properties, they still income qualify every year, I believe. But again, that's a whole nother brain set. I'd have to look into that.
Okay. Well, so let's do this if we can. I mean, so we have two options here. We want a little more conversation to happen around this question. If you're in, you're in, or do you have to get income verified every year? And is there a point at which you got to leave if your income grows? Those, it seems to me, are the choice points there. So do we want to adopt all of these other changes and then maybe come back and address this at a later time? Or do you want us to hold it all? It seems like at least Drew wants to come through maybe under this new policy. So maybe we go ahead and adopt everything else and just come back and address this one in a separate vote. I don't know if you or Kathy or Sam have thoughts about that.
I'm going to defer to Kathy on that. I would think there's not a big rush technically, but Drew is scheduled to come back to y'all, I think, in 3 weeks on October 20th. At the same time, we could bring the policy back with a couple of those things further ironed out, because I think it's worthy discussion, obviously, and we could bring it then if Kathy agrees or has another thought.
So Paul, I'm a little concerned at making, and we did it, as a group, making some of these changes, which I think were good. And, but I would like to put, based on the changes that have been proposed today, to put it back out for some comment. So I don't think that the committee needs to vote on it at all today, given that we've just made changes on it. So I would recommend that we put it back out, bring it back to HCD next month,
Okay.
and then take it to full council.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Sounds great. Thank you. And again, great work, Paul, and thanks to all of our partners who've helped on this and committee members for making suggestions. We definitely, yeah, it's good. Okay, so folks, we'll have another chance to weigh in on that, on the policy. And again, our partners who do this work, please do weigh in with what you think we ought to do on some of these questions. Okay, I think we are ready to just take general public comment. Actually, before we go there, anything else from Keith or Shanika, either of you, for the good of the order?
Not from me. Let's move on if there's nothing else.
Okay. Shanika, okay.
All right, we have one caller.
Okay.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Dee Williams and I live in Kenilworth here in Asheville. I just wanted to say on a very positive note how much I enjoyed working with Paul D'Angelo, Kimberly Archie, and some of the other members of the committee that were reconfiguring the Strategic Partnership Fund. I had the opportunity to learn a lot about SPF when I came to the meetings before the pandemic hit. And one of the things that I wanted to do was just to make sure, because we looked at the data and it looked like, and it wasn't any particular grantee, but it looked like funds were going out and no results were coming back. And it also looked like the program needed rubrics and performance metrics. And so this is, I guess, next month or whenever you look at it, it's what you'll see some of that. We also looked at the fact that problems in schools just don't start at the schools. These children show up with everything from trauma to just having been victimized by systemic racism and poverty. So I just want to say how important that was, and that we got off the thing about talking about just give the money over to the schools, because the schools can't be the only source of the solution for that particular problem. The other thing that I want to also include is the fact that I wish there were more investment into community-based organizations like the church and like nonprofits that are led by Black people, so that we can build affordable housing, mixed-use space for our community. Since we are the targets of it, we haven't had adequate investment into that. On a closing note, not so positive, but I want to be very accurate about everything I say. And I sent council a list of documents that would give you insight into a formal complaint that was filed by some community members. And it was an adverse comment or action against the Human Relations Council. Let me just say that we turned the documents in and it looked like everything from using insider information to formulate a grant, to violation of the city's contracting and procurement policies, the competitive bid process. I think, much to my chagrin, and I just want to be very fair about it, I don't think that board had a clue. And I don't think Ms. Archie either did, that they were doing something wrong. It happened, and so we called the mayor and the city manager, and I think some of y'all who are in that room right there may have shown up. I think Jamie Matthews came and took notes. One of the things that happened was that they were providing more oversight with the city attorney coming and somebody from the manager's office always at their meetings. When you have a situation like that where people don't know, some folks don't know, and then some folks who do know may lead them astray. So you wind up with what we call a rogue board, either wittingly or unwittingly. Let me just say that it saddens me to see the situation that we're in with our Black female city manager under attack and under question. I don't think a lot of people knew that this thing had happened. I know that Deborah Campbell is bound to silence as far as personnel policies are concerned. But since we instituted that action, I am not a city employee and we're not bound either. But we thought that it needed to be reported, and it was, and proper oversight. Going forward, I think that the department needs a performance audit You're talking about putting SPF funds. We just don't need a continuation of folks giving out funds to people they like. Also, the quarterly reports. I've read all the same stuff in the media that you did, and a lot of it is no more than allegation. But we did provide the documents to the mayor, the city manager, and I'm sure the city attorney got some of them as well. So it's not conjecture on our part. We did come up with a document that had been drawn in the form of a contract for signature by some of those board members on HRCA. So that is all that I want to say. I don't know if you knew about it, but you know it now. And I just think it's sad that the first Black city manager that we have has to come under this type of I just wish somebody, when people were attacking me, would have spoken up. But that's okay. That makes me more determined that I need to do this. So thank you for your time. And Paul, certainly just thank you for all your work. And Julie, thank you as well. And to Councilman Young and also Councilwoman Smith, thank you too. And just take care of the E&I department. It can be vital, but there have been some very grave missteps, and we've got proof of those. And so if you will, just take a look at the documents if you have any questions. And Deborah Campbell is owed an apology. Thank you for that. Bye now.
Thank you, Dee. Appreciate that. Ashley, do we have anyone else?
Nope, Dee was our only caller.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think we are finished with this month's business. Y'all can see on the agenda the things that are coming up next time. And of course, we'll add to this list reviewing the Luigi policy at our next meeting, revised Luigi policy at our next meeting. And with that, I think we are all finished. Thank you all very much and have a great day.